second reading today from the book of Philippians is a kind of farewell address, it seems, of Paul speaking to these people in Philippi. And we get a lot of information, a lot of messages in this reading that tell us something about Paul and tell us something about these people. It was filled with warmth and affection, without a doubt. There definitely was a warm relationship that Paul had with these people that he was writing to in the city of Philippi, in the country of Greece. There is a sentence in this reading that is used in ordinations. It goes like this: "May the Lord who has begun this good work in you bring it to completion." May the Lord who has begun this good work in you bring it to completion. These are words that we can all take to heart. This is something that the Lord would speak to each of us about our baptism. May the Lord who has begun now this good work in you bring it to completion. I remember when Archbishop Sheehan said those words to me. Today, as I remember them, they mean so much more. The impact of them is even more today on me than it was the day I first heard them. God has been faithful to me, bringing this work to perfection, always with bridges along the way. Think about this, that you are moving from where you began in your Christian walk with the Lord to today and then to the day that you died, is that long direction called the way of perfection. May the Lord who has started this good work in you bring it to completion. So there's a process of change that goes on in our lives that brings us eventually to this point of completion. But along the way, like any road that goes through a countryside, it has to cross bridges. And every time there's a bridge, every time there's a river to cross, a bridge has to be built. And in a sense, what we can talk about them, about these bridges, is like, they're like those moments in our lives when we are humbled by what life has done to us, or humbled by our own actions, and we have to turn to the Lord to recommit ourselves to the walk, and also perhaps have to deal with reconciliation and forgiveness. And that experience, each of those bridges in our lives along that way of completion, is a process of making us more and more like Him, perfecting us, and creating space within us so that the Lord might live in our hearts more deeply. Over the years, I think about, as I look back over it, since this is kind of a farewell talk, I thought about it in terms of my past, because that's Paul was doing. He was kind of looking back over their relationship. And as I look back over mine, I think about all the different communities that I have been a part of in my lifetime. Each of them unique, and each of them with their own personalities, and each of them with their own needs at the particular time in which I served there. I can speak with Paul when he says, "How I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus." How I long for all of you with the affection of Christ Jesus. It's not unlike the affection a father would have for his children. I long for you with the affection of Jesus. But the phrase, the affection of Jesus, is the key one I want to concentrate on just at this moment. What is this affection of Jesus all about? See it in terms of His affection for Jesus, or Jesus' affection for Him. I think of it first of all then as that affection that Jesus has for Him. Jesus is truly human. And truly He has that relationship with Paul that is one of affection for Him. Even though Paul never walked the streets with Jesus like Peter and John did, Paul had a relationship with Jesus nonetheless. And he felt the affection of Jesus for him. But like that bread that we use at Mass, it becomes Jesus Himself in the Eucharist. It cannot achieve its end unless it is consumed. And so this process of the affection of Jesus comes about in Paul through a dying kind of process, a dying to self, so that one can truly see Christ's affection for you. If someone is incapable of experiencing the affection of another, or incapable of experiencing the fact that someone else has feelings, then they have a tendency to turn towards using others for their own selfish purposes and sometimes for tragic ends. The Clifton Strengths Finder is a kind of test that many times community building experiences and businesses use to describe the gifts that an individual has and that they can bring to a community. And in the Clifton Strengths Finder, my top value is connectedness. It spells both my greatest joy and my deepest hurts. First of all, the joy. In terms of connectedness, it immediately translates into community for me. Coming together, overcoming divisions, caring for each other, carrying out the needs of the community together, working together. It also spells the hurts that I've experienced, not only in my own life, but as I see it happen in others. And so a special kind of affection I have for those people who have experienced that disconnectedness, things of dissension, things of rejection. Or in my own personal way, when I feel like I'm treated just simply as a functionary. I don't really have value in myself, I'm just a cog in the wheel carrying out a particular function. Somebody else can carry out that function. It doesn't matter who you are, just a matter of just being in place and carrying it out. Well, Paul, in his letter, though, wants the very best for his Philippians. He says to them, that your love may increase ever more and more, and that you may be filled with the fruits of righteousness. That first phrase, that your love may increase ever more and more. And so there's that affection of Jesus again. Jesus' affection for us, and then our affection for others. May your love increase ever more and more. So Paul's speaking this to a whole community of people. When he talks about may your love increase, he's talking about the love in the community. It was one of the things that was known about the community in Rome in the earliest days of the church. People who were not Christians saw this community as people who loved each other and practiced love for those people around them. They stuck out because of that. And Paul kind of accentuates that with this, that your love may increase ever more and more. But this business about filled with the fruits of righteousness, what's that all about? What is the fruits of righteousness? The prayer is probably mine as well for you, that you love one another, and that love would be ever increasing. And that you would discover your own worth as loved by Jesus. And that discovery makes you want to spill that out into others. And so that's the fruits of righteousness. It's one thing to be righteous, but it's another thing to have the fruits of righteousness come from that. Righteousness is knowing that God does love us and forgives us and is merciful. But then to take that and to help make that be understood and felt by others. That's the fruit of righteousness. And then finally he says, may your knowledge and every kind of perception be discern what is of value. So that may your knowledge grow, and may you have that ability to perceive and discern what is of value. That's a really important prayer for us in our everyday life. As we evaluate different things that come our way, what's important, what is not, what should I spend time on, what shouldn't I? You know, just the evaluation you make in terms of the time you spend with your kids versus making sure that checkbook balances. The worries you have about your everyday life, you sometimes forget the things that are most important. So let that perception and discernment of value always be part of you, so that you can always evaluate the way you're carrying out your vocation, the way you're carrying out your life. You know, are you paying attention to the things that are most important? So this discernment is the ability to judge everything according to that higher standard of loving our neighbor and loving God completely. And so when you have that feeling of love deep in your heart from God himself, everything else falls into place. You know, it's what has held me together as I go through the different trials of my life and the difficulties we have these days, of being a priest and being a pastor. It's what holds me together. It's what is core, to understand that I can take these things back to the Lord, I can lay them at His feet, and I can say, Lord, I'm having a difficult time with this, or this is upsetting me, or whatever it is, or some price or major things, and I've had lots of stuff that's happened in my 35 years. But I go back to that very core thing of concentrating on the affection that Jesus has for me. And then I'm built up inside, and I can go back to doing the work that I'm assigned to do. He speaks to me in my heart then. And that's what Paul's getting at, that affection of Christ, may that grow. Helps me to evaluate myself, helps me to cross those bridges, helps me to be humble enough to recognize I don't have it all together, and to even have a quality kind of fear that maybe I won't be ready to meet Him face to face. So to recognize how much that gift from Him is so precious. So I'm forever changed in my life because of the people that I've met and the assignments that I've had, and by the people who have welcomed me into their lives and let me be a part of their families. And hope in some way that I've been able to do what Jesus says to the Philippians through Paul today, that in some way, shape, or form I've helped people to see God's plan in their life and not gotten too much in the way of making God's plan happen in your lives. In the Gospel today, John the Baptist comes on the scene to preach about this baptism of repentance. Later on, he makes a statement that he must decrease and Jesus must increase. And that's really true for every single one of us. That it's Christ who must increase. We must decrease. In other words, we're not the most important thing. It is Christ and His love for His